Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of what is going to be an absolute fantastic new podcast that's going to blow all over YouTube. Associated with the Blue podcast, we are the Golden Show. The Golden Show is basically where we talk about all things football all around the world. We talk about some of the most amazing moments and some of the absolutely horrible moments, like when Big Sam puts 5 goals past Chelsea's team, which I don't want to talk about, but that's part and parcel of football. So this podcast is going to be uploaded on the Blue Podcast YouTube channel at 4 o'clock every Friday. And me and George will be doing the show once a week. And if it pops off, maybe we'll be in demand for more. And you won't have to just see me and George's ugly face. We will have guests on hopefully every single week. We'll have people from all sorts of football communities, all sorts of from places all around the world, experts in certain areas. So this is going to be a podcast that's not to miss. And of course, it's on a Friday afternoon. The weekend's here. So how could you ask for a more perfect time for an absolute incredible podcast? So I've got my co-host in George Kyle, who I met through the Dugout Football channel. He's a very big fan of what we do on the channel and how we do our podcast over there. So George has accepted to be my co-host for the Golden Show, which I'm extremely pleased with. I think this guy suits the role absolutely perfectly. He knows his football like there's no tomorrow. And him and a few people that we've had on the World Football podcast, especially Reese. Him and these two, he's clashed heads. So this guy gives his opinions, and it's can ask for a better go. So George, tell us about yourself, who you support, and what you're looking forward to doing on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind words, Josh. Very excited, obviously, to be involved in the inaugural or first, premiere show of the Golden Show. Obviously, as you sort of alluded to, met yourself on the Dugout channel. And obviously met the boys from the Blue podcast on there as well. Obviously Tom and Ben, I believe it was, a few weeks ago or so. And obviously I've watched their shows, obviously the Purple Show as well. I'm a particular fan of, and hoping that we can, really sort of set and sort of adhere to those standards really, and have a really sort of good podcast going forward. In terms of the sort of bit about me, obviously Manchester United fan through and through. Sort of really, passionate about my opinions towards Manchester United, but at the same time, a real fan of overall football, and hoping that we can really sort of bring an overall spin to world football and football in general, and any sort of topics. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Let's make this a show to remember.
I think that's very well said done, because obviously all the shows on the Blue podcast there's a Manchester United sections, there's Arsenal sections, there's Chelsea sections, but this is where it all comes together, and we basically sum up the football week on the Friday, and then we'll hopefully predict what's coming at the weekend. So, it's a very good show. Hopefully, obviously we'll have the Euros here in the summer, so that, the football is coming, plenty of talking about transfers, could the Leeds United horse Haaland go, could Messi be leaving, it's never ongoing for us. So we've got a lot to keep an eye on. Obviously, so for everyone who's wondering, I'm Josh. I'm a Chelsea supporter. For some people who are probably going to say oil money, but I support Chelsea. It's obviously been a very difficult few years for us. Obviously we won the FA. We got to an FA Cup final last year. We finished top 4 with Frank Lampard, and Lampard got sacked, and now we got Thomas Tuchel. We lost 5-2 to Big Sam's West Brom, and then put four past Crystal Palace. It's a very weird season for Chelsea. But we're without getting too ahead of ourselves, we could end up winning the Champions League. I think you could say we're one of the favourites for it. So it's very interesting. I'm the host of this podcast. I know there'll be sorts of edits and graphics. That's what all I did, and me and George work together collectively to get guests on, when to record episodes, what to talk about, the agenda. So we do all the behind the scenes of this. Is fair. There's a lot going on behind the scenes of this. It looks beautiful to all of you, but it's a lot of work for us too. But it's the whole point of this is to give content for people to enjoy. So obviously George had said this is going to be uploaded 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock every Friday week. So do you think can you see this podcast being something that everyone will enjoy? When you preview the games coming ahead and reviewing the games that's happened and all. Do you see this podcast being unique compared to the other ones out there?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's there's not many or any sort of like ones where you'd think you're covering those sort of previews of big important weekend games. It is important, I think, for us to sort of on this podcast, as you said, sort of an overarching theme is to sort of cater for all fans. And I think, and I hope, and that's what we're going to strive to do, is sort of set the standard in that regard. Obviously, the other thing that will enable us to do is sort of cover the midweek matches. As we've sort of spoken about, obviously you've spoken about the Champions League, we've got the Europa League, things like that as well, which will only have just have occurred really when we're sort of speaking about on the Friday for us to discuss. And obviously, you've also talked about the forthcoming Euros, which is only a couple of months or so away now. I think it begins on the 11th of June, so in actual fact, exactly 2 months away. So there's lots and lots for you guys as the viewers to get stuck into. And we're really hoping that this can be a great success for the Blue Podcast. Onwards and upwards, really.
Yeah, very well said. Your choice of words has been excellent so far. As I said, I obviously co-host the Wonderful podcast on the Dugout Football channel. That's run pretty well. So we're going to try and bring a very similar idea to this channel, that we're all going to try obviously make it more unique. We're going to be doing, I think we're going to be doing Premier League 11s at the end of each episode, which is going to start off today, which I think will be it's obviously it's hard to do it because we're recording this on the Sunday midday so there's still Premier League games to happen today. So the 11's not going to be exactly 100%, but it's going to give you guys an idea of how we're going to basically do it going forward. This whole episode is just about basically showing you guys what is going to be happening from next week onwards, just making sure that so you guys all know how it's going to work and what we look like, and how biased George is to Manchester United. So to basically start off, so I'm going to basically play what is going to be our intro for the Golden Show. This is basically going to play at the start of every single show starting from next week. And if anyone has any ideas or any suggestions in the comments, please let me know, and I will absolutely try and element this. But this will give you guys an idea of how we're kind of going to basically do things and the atmosphere that we want to create, especially at the start of the show.
Over the edge, feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless. Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance. Not the life I want to live, I want to take it all. Standing tall, fear I've weighed the person you are. Oh, break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
that's basically that's the intro for the show. I think it'll be a very good way to introduce it. So obviously, me and George have explained who we are, what the podcast is about to be, and hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight to how we're going to be going forward. So, George, obviously, as I said, we're associated with the Blue podcast. You know, these guys have got really big things coming on. You know, we've got the Purple Show with obviously a City and Arsenal, Chelsea, and a Liverpool fan. You know, there's going to be a solo Chelsea podcast, which I'm also going to be taking part in and hosting. There's going to be a United section, which hopefully we'll get you involved in. So, you know, this is a very good channel. You know, where you have. It's like you have all your different clubs, and there are all the different shows for those clubs, and then you've also got us who kind of rounds it up at the end of the week. So, you know, are you happy to be associated and involved with the project that is going to be happening on the channel?
100%, yeah. Obviously, as you've spoken about, I think there's something for everyone really with this channel. Obviously, like you sort of alluded to, the Purple Show is something that I've really sort of enjoyed when I've been watching it. You know, you sort of get, I think, with all the different sort of types of fans, you know, from different clubs, you sort of get that sort of, you know, respect, but also you get that sort of rivalry and the banter, and there's really sort of, you know, a chance with when those sort of opinions meet. There's really some chance for sort of middle ground and good debates and arguments which people viewers can get involved in. Obviously, like I said, sort of met Tom and Ben, you know, when we're on Doug's channel when we were sort of doing the podcast together. Both sort of really nice lads, and you know, it's a real pleasure and a privilege for them to invite me on, and for you to be my co-host as well. So really looking forward to getting some of my teeth stuck in really, and hopefully obviously all you guys and the viewers are hopefully going to get you sort of involved as and when obviously in the future, and really sort of make this a real interactive experience for the viewers. So yeah, really looking forward to the challenge.
That's very, very well said. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting show. And this show will only get bigger and better as, you know, as the weeks go on, and you know, as they're more understanding of what the viewers want to enjoy and what to see more and maybe less often. Also, you know, we're all open ears. You know, anything you guys want improved, anything you want added, anything you want spoke about the following week, you know, put in the comments, and you know, me and George will be straight on to it. You know, we'll absolutely reply to your comments and and every shit way of form. So we do want to talk a bit about football too, because you know, we kind of want to give you guys an idea. So it's only me and George today, and because of when we're recording this, it's a bit awkward to talk about some things. So we're going to be talking about the overall general season more than what's happened in the Premier League during this current week and what's happened in the Champions League, because there's still second legs to be played, and also we're just going to be talking about the general outcome of the season so far, and then next week we'll start our weekly reviews. I think that sounds fair enough, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So we're going to start off with the Premier League. So we're going to talk about clubs that we think are underachieving, have overperformed, and then we're going to try and do our Premier League 11 so far of the current season.
Close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
So starting off with the Premier League, it's been a very, very interesting Premier League season. I think there's some things that we did not expect, and there's some things that we absolutely expected. So we're going to start off from working from away up at the bottom to the top and talking about some key teams. So starting off with Sheffield United. You know, obviously Sheffield United had an incredible year last year under Chris Wilder. You know, they finished I think it was 8th or 9th. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they finished top half. They finished top half. You know, I had them relegated quite badly last season, and I think we all did. I think we all looked like absolute mugs by the end of it. Obviously, Sheffield United aren't mathematically gone, but let's be honest, they're gone. Obviously, Chris Wilder walked away. Chris Wilder walked away. Now they've got the Hibernian reject Paul Heckenbaum as the caretaker manager.
Yes.
How do you see Sheffield? How do you see Sheffield United? They've conceded. They've only scored 17 goals in the Premier League this year, with conceding 52, with a minus 35 goal difference. You can't stay up in the league in that shape, can you?
I think they were, to be honest with you, I think they suffered really badly from a horrendous start. I can't even remember how many losses they'd sort of had, and I think they were sort of on about 2 or 3 points, something like that, for a long time. Right up almost until Christmas. And once you've had a star like that, unfortunately, you're never going to recover. Obviously, Sheffield United have lost Dean Henderson. I think he was a real major part of that first season success. Such a capable pair of hands. Arguably one of the best keepers during that season. And obviously, you've talked about those stats there. And obviously, when you don't score enough goals and you're obviously leaking like a sieve, then you're always going to be in trouble. Obviously, Sheffield United, if we're talking about the entire season, have got a few creditable results. Notably, obviously, the win at Old Trafford, when they got sort of were playing out of their skin, and obviously secured 3 points, but ultimately haven't done it enough. And as you say, although they're not mathematically relegated, it's all but a certainty for them. And ultimately, an incredibly disappointing season for their fans, I feel. But then, it's one of those things. They're almost a sort of catch-all, really, to say sort of second season syndrome, isn't it? In the Premier League, is really what they're suffering from. I think they've been found out, and good luck to them in the Championship.
Do you think this was coming from the end of last season? Because obviously when we came back from the COVID shutdown, they weren't the same team when they came back. Do you think the lack of fans, especially at Brian Lane, hurt them a lot? Do you think that they were just living off a high of good results and the confidence just kept on going? And then when they came back, the quality finally just started to show that they were not that type of team. Do you think that it could have been different if that COVID break never happened?
Yeah, possibly. I think ultimately, there would be quite a few reasons for it. I think, obviously, I've talked about Dean Henderson not being there, but also, obviously, you've spoken about, after the COVID break, no fans. Fans do make a massive difference to things. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about Manchester United slightly later, but obviously, have now got a phenomenal away record in the Premier League. I think it's like 23 games or something like that, unbeaten away from home. Obviously, there's a match later on today that might change, but obviously, I don't think that record. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer talked about. I don't think that record would be the same if fans were in the ground. Obviously, going away from home, there's obviously the home crowd really does add. It's almost like a 12th man, I think, and certainly I think Sheffield United would have benefited from that. But also, you've got to sort of say, in my opinion, that it can be as simple as that sort of second season, or like I said, teams don't necessarily know your sort of tactics or know your players in that first sort of season. And I think obviously after the break, people sort of had wised up to the way Sheffield United were playing. And my sort of final point would be that I feel like if we use Leicester, for example, obviously when they won the 2015-16 Premier League, and then obviously did relatively badly the following season. I think it came sort of mid-table, wasn't it? I think after that. Sometimes, obviously, all the energy, and obviously you've talked about as well the confidence and the buzz that you get from going on a run like that. Sometimes it can take something like we obviously talked about the lockdown to sort of disrupt that flow, and obviously the confidence that they had and that sort of role that they're on. Something could just snap it or break it. And then obviously you're in a downward spiral, and they've been going downwards ever since. And as we've sort of spoken about, the start to their season was absolutely horrendous. There was no way they were coming back after that. So ultimately, they've sort of been found out, and they'll be getting relegated in the summer.
Moving on to another relegation candidate, West Brom. Now, West Brom have only won 4 games all year with 9 draws and 17 losses. They've actually scored more goals than Sheffield United, which is crazy to think, with 25 goals scored, but have conceded 59, which is more than Sheffield United. Now, obviously, West Brom are already 8 points away from CFD, and here is the remaining fixtures that they have. So they host Southampton today, then they go away to Leicester, away to Villa, home to Wolves, away to Arsenal, home to Liverpool, home to West Ham, and away to Leeds. So, now, Big Sam has never been relegated. I don't think Big Sam should. I don't think Big Sam should have been hired in the first place because Stephen Bannock should never been sacked. The fact he got sacked after a 1-1 draw at the Etihad was incredible. I don't think Big Sam has really improved them. I think he's actually made them worse because I don't think they're scoring as much goals as they probably would under Bannock, and the defense is still just as bad. So, do you see the great escape with West Brom, or do you think that they're going down with Sheffield United?
Well, obviously, you've spoken about Big Sam's pedigree. A manager who's never had his team relegated. Obviously, he's very famously someone who comes in to steady a sinking ship and perform miracles with teams. I think this might be a bridge too far for him. West Brom, although they've obviously, as you said, they're still, within relative touching distance. Obviously it's still a reasonably sizable gap. And obviously you've just sort of outlined the remaining fixtures for them. And if I'm sort of like running through them on my head, I don't necessarily see them garnering enough points to do so. I don't really see the talent in the squad. Obviously, you've also spoken about how many goals they're letting in, and obviously the goals scored is still relatively small or meagre. So as I said, I don't necessarily. I'd obviously, if any West Brom fans are watching, I'd love to be proved wrong, but I do see this as a step too far, and I think they will get relegated. Sadly.
Yes, I agree. I think West Brom made a really big mistake there in the summer. They didn't sign enough players. They kind of relied on old veterans in defence, which it does work. But when you're playing like a whole backline of a mix of inexperienced and experienced players, it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think Big Sam has really made much of a difference to West Brom. I think the squad is literally, there's not much you can do with it. And it's obviously hypocritical because they scored 5 against us, and that was a free game, and it happens. It does happen. But it would not surprise me if Big Sam keeps them up because it's what Big Sam does. He is known for this. But you look at those fixtures. This Wolves, I can't see them beating Wolves. Leicester will beat them, West Ham will beat them, Arsenal you'd like to think will beat them. So and that automatically knocks them down mathematically. So if they do stay up, I will eat my hat live on the show at the end of the season. All right, so there we go.
Everyone pray for that for the views.
Right, moving on to Fulham. Now, Fulham are only 3 points off Newcastle, and Newcastle are currently losing to Burnley as we speak, 1-0. Microfito with the goal. Now, Fulham have lost the last 4 games, and they had a really good run of form. I think there were 8 games unbeaten. They've won 5, but they've only won 5 games this season. There's a killer point here: 11 draws. 11 draws. If they literally turn one of those draws into a win, they would be out of the relegation zone as we speak. Yeah. Now, Newcastle are worse than Fulham. Newcastle play worse, they perform worse, they have a worse manager. I could see Fulham staying up and Newcastle going down. I hope that's what happens. How do you see it going?
It's to be honest with you, that obviously you've spoken about differential, and again, only 3 points. It was very, very difficult to say, really. I think it's almost like a 50-50 sort of thing, really. It's not something which is very clear cut because with sort of best respects to Fulham and Newcastle, I think there's a real sort of lack of quality in both sides. Obviously, offensively, and what you're looking for really is someone to sort of score the goals that are necessary to sort of drag them over the line. And neither team for me has really got that sort of like star quality or star striker that's gonna obviously score you the goals. It's almost like quite a sort of meagre battle. Obviously, sort of in regards to obviously Fulham's sort of recent form, which you've obviously spoken about. Obviously the loss to Wolves was quite disappointing. Almost in the final sort of few minutes on Friday, and again you could see in some of the sort of situations you could see that although they are very sort of solid defensively, it obviously only takes 1 or 2 chances, and obviously offensively they haven't really got much going for them. They're not necessarily going to score enough goals. So you are quite right. Obviously Fulham could sort of topple Newcastle, but for me, it's almost a toss of a coin really to see which of the two is going to go down.
Well, here's Fulham's remaining results. They go away to Arsenal, ouch. Away to Chelsea, ouch. Home to Burnley, away to Southampton, away to Manchester United, and obviously the big game at the end of the season, they host Newcastle. Yeah, it's hard to see Fulham picking up much points against Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester United. Low. I'll get Newcastle games now, but those are really difficult games for Fulham, and still defensively, they still are a bit leaky defensively. You can see those three teams definitely getting at least a goal against them.
Yes, and I think they just won't score. Their trouble is they can't score. And, that's obviously the unfortunate thing is that again, I don't see the sort of star quality in Fulham or obviously Newcastle really either. I don't see the sort of star quality that's gonna see them through. But obviously, it's interesting that you said that the final match is going to be between the two. A sort of wicked, sort of devilish part of me wants to see that being the sort of relegation decider, because it would be incredibly funny. But whether that happens.
Wait until you hear this. This is Newcastle games. I'm going to watch your facial expression here. Home to West Ham, away to Liverpool, home to Arsenal, away to Leicester, home to City, home to Sheffield United, and away to Fulham. That's nasty.
Yeah, the only one they're looking forward to is obviously those final two, isn't it? Sheffield United and Fulham, because the rest of them, obviously they may pick up a point or two, but it looks very bleak for them, because obviously all those teams you've mentioned, you'd fancy to beat them. So, and obviously with the Fulham fixtures that you also outlined earlier, again, you'd expect most of those teams to beat them. So, it could very well happen that is a sort of crunch match on the final day of the season, where whoever wins, survives, and whoever loses gets relegated.
When you look at Newcastle's last 5 games, they've drew 4 out of their last 5 games with 1 loss, and they're currently losing now. It's a team that just cannot win games. They don't have a winning. I don't think they have a winning mentality. A very simple yes or no to you: should have Steve Bruce been sacked a long time ago?
No.
No. Oh, why is that?
Only because, well, I'm trying to think how in my sort of honest, this is sort of like in a neutral point of view in terms of sort of seeing Newcastle from the outside. So I'm sure Newcastle fans would correct me and they'd want him sacked because of how badly they've performed. But sometimes, I feel like I'm trying to be relatively careful here in case I do offend Newcastle fans. But I feel like sometimes, what sort of stock of manager were they expecting, really, if that makes sense? In terms of Steve Bruce is a relatively creditable manager. He's obviously he's no Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp or Thomas Tuchel or anyone like that. So but again, what can they sort of expect, really? Obviously, Newcastle is I know from obviously watching sort of fans and things like that, it's a terribly run club, but in terms of all their sort of spending, and they really don't. I don't necessarily feel like, obviously they had the takeover, didn't they? The potential takeover they were going to have, which would have changed their fortunes dramatically. But as it stands at the moment, I think obviously they might feel they can get a better manager than Steve Bruce, but again, it's sort of thinking which manager would be of a caliber they could reasonably expect, which is sort of commensurate with them as a club. Ultimately, yeah, maybe he should have been sacked, but I don't feel like they could have got someone in of much better quality that would have changed the team's fortunes, because I feel like the personnel, which is always the most important thing at a club, in other words, the actual team that are playing, aren't very good.
Okay, that's fair enough. I think Newcastle will go down. I just think Fulham have more of an ability to pick up results against the bigger teams than what Newcastle do. I think Burnley. If Steve Bruce is playing a back 5 against Burnley, why would you play a back 5 against anti-football Burnley? You're just asking to lose there, especially now that they're 1-0 down. I think they are missing Callum Wilson. I think Callum Wilson's a massive, massive loss for Newcastle. I think when he was in the team, they were scoring goals and they were seeing out games, but I just don't think they'll have enough. I just think Fulham have the more determination to go out there and get points other than Newcastle. I think Newcastle are as good as going for me. To go up the table, we're going to skip up to Southampton now. I like Southampton a lot as a club. I love Hasenhuttl. I love what he does. I love his style of play. I love his energy. And it's a team that you don't playing against Southampton. It's not fun, except for Manchester United. When they bet them 9-0 or whatever it was.
That was very much a case though of that red card though within the 2 minutes. Yeah, very
much so. So it's Southampton were a good team. They sit 14th in the league. They've scored 39 goals and conceded 53. I've had Southampton as my surprise package, and they started off the season really, really good, and then they get injuries and they started to lose games, and things started to look a bit bleak for them. But Southampton, if they have a good transfer window, Hasenhuttl will be there. Southampton probably could push maybe for the European Conference League places, as they are now going to be called. I like Southampton and I like Hasenhüttl. I think if say Spurs sack Mourinho, I would not be surprised if Hasenhüttl was a contender for the job. So do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, very good manager. Obviously, you've spoken about he's quite an unfortunate manager in the sense that obviously he's had 2 9-0s in consecutive seasons against him. Obviously against Leicester and against ourselves this season, Leicester last season, I should say. But ultimately, Southampton are a very good football club. Obviously, what they've got to try and do is sort of retain onto their best assets or their best talents. I think sometimes, obviously, you'll see them sort of migrating to different clubs instead, where they're going on to greater success. So they've really got to try and secure and retain their better players. To really sort of climb and achieve stuff. And obviously, if we're sort of talking about the season as a whole, they've still got a FA Cup semi-final to look forward to against Leicester. So yeah, there's still a chance of silverware as well. So Southampton, are definitely a club that, and in particular, obviously, talking from a United fans' perspective, they're always a club. As we saw, obviously, when in the 3-2 win back in the fall, they're always a club that will, are very good at battling. Obviously, James Ward-Prowse, a real sort of standout character for them. Made it into the England squad now, potentially going to go to the Euros. A wicked free kick on him as well. Really, really good. Probably one of if not the best for a free kick taker in the league. And yeah, they're a very, very good side. Big fan of Ralph Hasenhüttl, and as you said, he may well go to Tottenham if that might be sort of next step. I feel like obviously I think Maurizio Pochettino made the same step as well, didn't he, from Southampton to Tottenham? So very good club. And yeah, have done reasonably well. Obviously, as you said, the surprise package could have made it slightly higher up, but obviously, I feel like sort of mid-table at least is their their aspirations.
Going to the club with 2 points ahead of them, Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, obviously, as we record this, had a very difficult game against Chelsea yesterday. Chelsea were 2-0 up in 10 minutes with Kai Havertz. Havertz played exceptionally well. It was one of the best performances Havertz has had for us all season long. Pulisic played quite well too. Obviously, Christian Benteke scored, which meant no clean sheet. Anyone he scored had to be Benteke, but apparently strikers like to turn up for us. You have David McGormick of Sheffield United, Callum Robertson, Christian Benteke, all these Chelsea players that shoot rubber bullets against other teams. Yet.
Just very quickly on the Kai Havertz thing. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Christian Pulisic. Obviously, we're going to Chelsea at some point, so I won't go into too great a detail here. I'm a big fan of Christian Pulisic. I feel like maybe his injury record, he always seems to be injured quite a lot. Obviously, but when he's playing, he's absolutely phenomenal. I feel like incredible dribbler, really good finisher, all sorts of crosses, everything. He's sort of I'm a real big fan of his. Kai Havertz. The one thing I would say on with regards to him is that he was good. Obviously, he's a very good technical player, but I feel like his shooting could be worked on. I feel like he was some of those shots that obviously were saves from the keeper. They were straight at him. They were straight at the Crystal Palace keeper. He should need to improve that. So
I do agree. I think it says a lot. It says a lot about the striker situation at Chelsea when Kai Havertz is playing as the false nine with Drury and Abraham being left on the bench. We'll come back to Chelsea. Yeah. I'll talk about more Kai Havertz and that. But back to Crystal Palace. Palace under Roy Hodgson have never been under a relegation scare. They've always been comfortable. But I think it comes to your point as a football club. You need to take the next step. You need to take the risk. You need to try and move forward. Younger players, younger manager, better ideas. Do you think Palace should just extend Roy Hodgson's contract, which is due to expire here at the end of the year, and just keep playing it safe and just keep staying in the league? Or do you think it's time to say, thank you, Roy, for everything you did. We're now going to go and try and take a new step? Do they take the risk or do they play it safe?
I feel like they'll probably play it safe. I think in football, it's all sometimes it is all about playing safe. You're right. They should probably take a risk. Obviously, with Crystal Palace, I believe that they've got the sort of oldest average sort of age of lineups of any club in the Premier League. So many veterans. But then obviously you almost feel like that's not something that can be sustained. Obviously, because if they're going to continue to play older players, then obviously they'll keep getting older and older. And obviously the results and league position will keep depreciating. So at some point you've got to sort of stick or twist, and ultimately they're going to have to twist at some point if Hodgson continues to play obviously a lot of the older players, because eventually, like I said, they'll become too old. Obviously their standards will drop, and so will Crystal Palace. So yeah, I would, if I was Crystal Palace, I would bring in a new manager, but I feel like obviously the pragmatism will win out, and I feel like they'll keep on hold of Roy Hodgson. But like I said, I can foresee quite a bleak future for them if they continue to obviously select older. I mean, obviously, I think Van Aanholt is probably going to go in the summer, isn't he? But they really do need to sort of start bringing in some younger blood and really spending some money, I think, if they want to get higher up the league or at least retain their position.
That's fair enough. You see, it is difficult with Crystal Palace because, as you say, do you take that gamble? Do you move away from what's been working for you? And I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult as a club and a chairman to make that decision. I think Roy probably should go. I think Crystal Palace, you have to also look at the fact, do the players really want to play under him anymore? Do they want to keep playing this defensive old style? And the fact, yes. They did not have that same biting edge of Crystal Palace nobody have under Roy Hodgson. We were able to pass through them really, really. Also because we were very good, but we also were passed through them very easily. The gaps were more open than what they normally are. So I think it comes to. I think that Roy's time is gone. I think Roy also probably maybe was kept also together through the COVID times too, because COVID times are obviously very uncertain for financial reasons in that too. But I just can't see Roy being the man to take them forward still, because he's a very basic, safe manager, and I think Crystal Palace need to take that extra step and
they do need to keep hold of Wilfried Zaha as well. I think he's very important for them. He's someone that's been linked away with the move quite consistently over the past few years, but obviously he's very vital for them in terms of their sort of offensive capabilities. So they really do need to keep hold of him, but whether they will or not remains to be seen.
So moving on to 11th place Arsenal. Now, yes, I just said 11th place Arsenal. So Arsenal have scored 40 goals this season and have conceded 35. They've won 2 games out of their last 5 with 2 draws and 1 loss. Arsenal continue to go down more than up. This is not a club that's going in a direction better. And, they have a serious chance of going out here to Slovakia Prague, because going away to Slovakia Prague is one of the most difficult things to do in European football. They've not lost there. I don't think they've lost a European game there in a very, very long time. Yeah. So, obviously, I don't think it's hard to know. I think Arteta is probably doing worse. Frank Lampard got a transfer ban Chelsea to the top 4. Arteta, I still think has a quite a good, decent squad to his exposure. Is sitting 11th with them. I don't think Arteta is the right man to take Arsenal forward. I think that the more they keep him in charge, the more they're just going to be a mid-table club. They do need setup. They do need probably a right back. They do need centre midfielders. But they're not going to go out and spend the money on doing that. That's just not what they do. So I think it's safe to say that Arsenal once again, George, have had an absolutely abysmal season. They're out of the FA Cup to a Southampton squad. They could go out here of the Europa League on Thursday night. It's just not looking good for them.
I just, to be honest with you, I've got quite a lot to say on sort of Arsenal. I feel like, but again, you've got to be very careful, I think, with obviously because the Arsenal fans are certainly very passionate about their club. So I'm going to speak relatively, not really in too damning terms if I can, but I'll try and still be honest. I feel like Arsenal, there's so many problems with Arsenal. We could sort of almost spend an entire show just talking about Arsenal, because obviously a great club who, obviously moved to the Emirates, 15, 16 years ago now, and have really sort of struggled. Obviously, they got into the top 4. Obviously, famously sort of like had that long period without winning trophies, and obviously the FA Cup has become a bit of a, sort of silver lining for them, because they have won that quite consistently over the past few years. But in terms of this season, obviously a lot of their fans were very positive and confident when the season started, that they were going to get top 4. Sort of blown away by the fact that they'd signed, Thomas Partey. It was obviously quite a good sort of feeling around the past. And obviously Willian as well had a brilliant game. I can't remember who it was they played. It was Fulham, I think.
Fulham at the start of the year,
in the first game of the season. And I remember thinking, and I remember actually sort of saying it as well. I remember saying, just wait on this Willian thing, because yet again Arsenal fans have gone over the board on him. I bet he's obviously Chelsea are very famous, for giving Arsenal cast-offs or deadwood that turned out to be terrible. I mean, if you think about it, obviously Petr Cech. Can't say enough good words about him at Chelsea in terms of an absolute legend of the Premier League, one of the top 5 keepers of the Premier League, no question. Of most clean sheets, I think, as well. Still, isn't it 202? Yep, I think
that's correct.
Absolutely phenomenal goalkeeper, but obviously went to Arsenal was relatively he was okay, but he wasn't tearing up trees, and obviously made quite a few catastrophic errors at crucial points for them. Same with obviously David Luiz, who is at some points outstanding. Or at some points comical, and obviously Willian this season has been no exception. They got almost sort of became, thought he was sort of the next Messi after that first game, and then he turned out to be absolutely terrible. And I feel like Arsenal just they've got such very poor players. Unfortunately, I mean, I feel almost sorry for them really in some regards, because the players aren't there. Arteta has obviously learned from Pep, but obviously Pep has got the checkbook, hasn't he? He's got the blank checkbook, and he's got all the money and all the players. So there's only so much you can do with quite limited players. And I feel like Arsenal have got so many issues. Obviously, centre defence, they sort of comedy of errors really all the time. Total lack of fight and hunger. There's no real strong mentality at the club either. I feel like there's no leaders. Obviously, Aubameyang's the captain, but since he got his sort of payday, his massive payday in the summer, I think it was his larger contract, he's been absolutely terrible as well. And you're sort of relying on youngsters. I think obviously with Smith Rowe and Saka, and to be fair to those two players, phenomenal talents. Obviously, Saka especially, I really do rate, and I hope he goes to the Euros in the summer. I feel like he does offer something different. He's a really exciting, exhilarating player. But when you're relying on two, relative sort of youngsters, then you really are sort of in trouble, unfortunately. And like I said, obviously Arsenal are very much a series of bottlers. Really disappointing season. So many losses, so many draws, so many terrible performances. But obviously you've talked about the Europa League, obviously with Slavia Prague. Yeah, that's going to be a very, very difficult scenario. We may talk about sort of Europa League a bit more in a bit, but I feel like they're definitely going to be they'll definitely have an uphill battle, shall we say, because obviously the strikers, Lacazette's opportunity, obviously the one-on-one he had on Thursday, that was how he missed that, I've got no idea. He had all the time in the world to set himself. And,
Lacazette has decreasing form as the seasons are going on, hasn't he? He came in and he was actually really, really good. I think under Unai Emery he did quite well, but ever since Unai Emery's got sacked, since Arteta came in, he just hasn't looked the same striker. He doesn't have the same cutting edge that he used to, and it's sad because he had the potential to be an incredible striker. I think him and Lacazette as a partnership went really, really well. But as you say, Aubameyang's been played on the position. He's been played on the wing more than striker. He's been played on the right and the left, which he isn't comfortable doing. Arteta sticks with it. Lacazette just looks out of form and has no confidence at all. And I think that one she reiterated to says that. So it's a very valid point. Now, I believe Arsenal do play today against Sheffield United. So if they lose to Paul Heckingbottom, I think that says all of itself. But do you think Arteta can take these guys forward, or do you think it is very similar to Lampard, where it was too soon, too quick, and they need to try and get another experienced manager in?
The issue for Arsenal is always going to be the money thing, though, isn't it? Because obviously, we'll get on to obviously Manchester United and how we spend our money, but I feel like money is such an important factor in football. Generally speaking, the more you pay for players and obviously wages and things like that, but also in terms of, particularly in terms of fees, the better quality player you'll get. Unfortunately, it's almost like, sort of money buys success, unfortunately, as we know. And obviously Arsenal, their owners don't like to spend the money. They'll sort of scrimp and save and, try and extend contracts of terrible players rather than getting rid of them and buying new acquisitions. So I feel like no matter who the manager would be, it will be very difficult, I think, for them to break into the top four, because you'd either have to be, in terms of sort of getting top four success, which is, would be a step forward for Arsenal and where Arteta would be trying to go next, if that makes sense. I feel like that, is going to be very difficult, because obviously you need two things, and that you need either way. You could have both, but you would need at least one of the two things, which is either that you would need to spend a lot of money, which Arsenal won't do. We know historically they won't do. Or you will need to be very astute in terms of who you buy, such as Leicester. Obviously, the amount of incredible deals that they get for very cheap. You'd have to have a very good for someone who is very good at spotting those bargains and then bringing them in, and real sort of and having them outperform what their fees were. Obviously, Leicester, as I said, probably the best at that. In terms of getting players for bargains, and obviously selling them on, as we know, with obviously Chilwell and Maguire for extortionate fees. So like I said, they need. You can have both of those things, but you need at least one of those, and Arsenal don't have either of them. So I don't see Arteta being very successful with Arsenal. But again, Arsenal fans, for your sakes, I hope that he is, but I don't see him.
Moving on to Leeds United, who are ninth in the league now. This is the extraordinary fact about Leeds United. Okay, they've literally conceded. Which I find incredible. 10 less goals than West Brom and 3 less than Sheffield United. Let's sit ninth in the league. They have a goal difference of 0 because they've scored 49 goals in the league, which has them ninth in the table. They've won their last 3 games. They had an incredible start against Man City, actually, down to 10 men. Stuart Dallas with the winner. It's hard to know about these because they're scoring goals, which gets them high up in the table. But you have to look towards next season. Well, I definitely look towards next season. They're only 3 points here off 7th, and we know 7th gets you a European place. If City or Chelsea win the FA Cup, the European place goes to 7th. So Leeds could get Europe, which would be the European Conference League this year, not the Europa League. Do you see? Say hypothetically, Leeds do go into Europe, okay, which will be the European Conference League next year. Do you think that they can continue scoring goals and conceding goals at the rate that they are and be perfectly fine, or do you think they're very much lucky to be this high up, conceding 49 goals in the league season?
Yeah, as you said, there's sort of an anomaly, really, when you look at the sort of bare statistics or the facts and so forth. From a quantitative manner, it does seem like Leeds shouldn't be where they are. But ultimately, I think after this many games in the season, it's at least 30, isn't it? For I think every club in the Premier League, you are where you deserve to be. In terms of the league sort of position. Leeds are really sort of, from a neutral's point of view, they're probably one of the best teams to watch in the Premier League, because it's sort of all guns blazing. You score 1, we'll score 2 sort of thing. They're really sort of quite on the front foot, aggressive. You're sort of trying to score and so forth. But you are right. Obviously, European football, it might choose some different tactics from Bielsa. He might decide to employ slightly more defensive ones than he has done previously, because obviously European football is a different ball game to the English league. And obviously obviously now that Leeds are safe next season, again, obviously we've seen what we've already discussed previously about Sheffield United's sort of second season syndrome. It will be very interesting to see how Leeds perform next season, and whether they continue to have this sort of cavalier approach. Where it's sort of like very attacking, but not necessarily focused on the bottom line, not conceding any. If they can get that sort of a bit better, then they might even succeed even higher. But certainly a very creditable position at the moment, and obviously no chance of being relegated, which would have been the first thing to secure when they came up. And obviously you've spoken about the victory over Man City, which has got to be one of their highlights. And obviously Dallas was absolutely incredible, really. That's that second goal when he was sort of charging through like Usain Bolt to finish it. And obviously as we saw sort of in the intro bit, I don't know if sort of an eagle-eyed viewer might have seen it. When we obviously saw the statistics of that match, it was 2 shots, two overall total shots and 2 shots on target, which are obviously both Dallas's goals. So like I said, Leeds very much one of the most attractive teams in the Premier League, and a pleasure to watch, and hopefully onwards and upwards for them as well. So yeah.
Moving on to we'll talk about 3 more teams. So, well, I think it's right we talk about West Ham United. I think it's only right that we speak about West Ham. West Ham play Leicester today, which is catastrophically massive. If Leicester lose this game, they are dragged back into a top 4 race scruffily. West Ham, if Leicester win, Leicester get a good point gap between above Chelsea. Meanwhile, West Ham will have to try and claw themselves, have to try and bring back some points, which they have some really big games coming up. I think I had a lot of people said West Ham were going to be going down this year, which obviously hasn't happened. They're 6th in the league. They're 2 points off Chelsea in 4th. I think Timo Werner has done an incredible job. He's manager of the season. Don't care what anyone says. He's manager of the season. They're definitely the surprise package. Though they have been given a significant blow to Mikel Antonio, who I believe has picked up quite a bad injury and can miss a couple of weeks. He's a big man. They don't have a backup striker. Obviously, Sebastian Haller was sold back in January. So, do you think West Ham could do it? Do you really think they could sneak into the top 4, or do you think that it'll probably be a bit too much for them and they'll be into the Europa League, which is still an incredible season?
To be honest with you, I sort of looked at the top 4, and at the moment, obviously, the team's also in and around it, and there's a real chance, I think, of Leicester being dragged back into it, and there's also a chance for me, I feel like, of the top 4 being, not necessarily in this order, but top 4 being sort of, big 4 really in the Premier League, which is going to be obviously City, United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. There's a real chance of that happening, I feel like. That's where I sort of see the top 4 race potentially going. Obviously, Leicester, hopefully the experience of last season will have stood them in good stead, and they can continue, because they have got a slight gap, obviously, on other teams, and hopefully that can stand them in good stead. But obviously, Chelsea are resurgent, aren't they, under Thomas Tuchel? I mean, if he, Sky would have been the limit really if he'd been in charge since the start of the season rather than Frank Lampard. Given especially how much money was spent in the summer as well. But sort of getting back to West Ham, top 4 is definitely attainable rather, and obviously, there's the real sort of standouts for them. Obviously, Declan Rice, a phenomenal player. Obviously, going to go with England to the Euros. Real sort of baller, and obviously for me, I've got a special spot for Jesse Lingard. Obviously, gone on loan and obviously really torn it up. Gone back into the England squad after many goals, assists, and sort of incredible skills and so forth, which are really keeping West Ham in that top 4 fight. And from my own point of view, I would. I'd like to see West Ham get top 4 because I think it would be a real it'd be really exciting, I think, for a team like West Ham to finally get Champions League football. And obviously, you've talked about David Moyes. I think even if there is, which I hope there, as I said, I hope there isn't. Even if there is a sort of slump at this end of the season, he really is manager of the season for me as well, because no one would have expected West Ham to achieve or go this high in the Premier League after so long. And he deserves full credit for that, for getting the most out of his players. I think he's a very good example of where a manager can, with tactics and style and employing the right personnel in the right places, he's a real example of a team of a manager who can spur their team onto greater heights. And as I said, I hope West Ham can get top 4.
Spurs obviously sit currently in 7th. They really need to beat Manchester United today. I was on a Manchester United preview game yesterday, and I said Jose cannot sit back and play for the draw here. This is a game where he's going to have to risk it. He's going to have to go and try and play goals, which obviously we all know Solskjaer likes to play on the counter attack, especially against these bigger teams, which could play into the hands. So, it's really. I think there's no doubt about this. Spurs have to win this game to keep our top 4 hopes even realistically manageable. Would you agree that this is tonight? Obviously, again, we're recording this on the Sunday before the game. This comes out on the Friday, so it's a bit of an awkward timing. But obviously, do you think Spurs really have to win this game to get top 4? Obviously, you're not going to say they're going to win because you're a Man United fan. But
I wouldn't be. Well, I was going to say I think they do have to. I think they do have to win to keep top 4 alive, because obviously we've Manchester United and Leicester have the points advantage. We've got to be favourites. Obviously, City are well gone, aren't they? They're not. I think they're not. They might even be mathematically not. guaranteed top four. I don't know, definitely, but certainly they're almost all gone. So there's really three sort of spots that teams are fighting for. Obviously, United and Leicester City have got the points advantage, but then sort of just behind them, really, you've got quite a few teams who are all sort of jostling for position. You've got, as you sort of spoken about, we've got sort of Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs, West Ham, Everton might even have a chance, Aston Villa as well. If you're sort of looking at different teams that are all really bunched together. All sort of trying to get that Champions League spot, but Spurs definitely do need to win against United. I would say though that obviously, and you are right, if they go offensive, that is going to play into Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's hands because he does prefer that sort of counter-attacking style, and it will sort of suit the play style that we would play. But Jose Mourinho is definitely one of the best managers of all time, really. He may well have fallen off, but he's still one of the best managers of all time. And I feel like this will still be, I mean, again, we're obviously sort of predicting something, but I feel like this will still be quite a dull game, with both sides sort of trying to, not to lose rather than trying to win the game, if that makes sense. And so I feel like it will be quite a dull game, and my sort of prediction would be a 0-0, really. But like I said, if Jose does decide to risk it, I think that will play to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's hands, because we do have pace on the counter attack. And I feel like whoever scores the first goal will probably win the match, because that will suit whichever team it is that scores it. It will suit that team just to sit back and protect the lead. Both quite sort of negative, negative teams in some respects. But Spurs have, in terms of their sort of overall season, again, I think they would potentially have wanted to get top four at least. Under Jose Mourinho, obviously they've still got the League Cup final to fight with City for, which I'm hopeful that Spurs will win, because ultimately City fans do, but no one really wants to see them win or get a clean sweep of trophies. But overall, Spurs, I think, obviously offensively, Heung-min Son, amazing player, all rated him for many years, and a phenomenal player. Harry Kane, as we all know, phenomenal goal scorer. Not quite, in my opinion, anyway. I know a lot of people say he's the best striker in the world, but not really for me. Obviously, when you've got Lewandowski around, I feel like sometimes you can get that sort of bias. I feel like from fans, but obviously both phenomenal players. Gareth Bale obviously has sort of come into a bit of form at points during the season as well. But yeah, I feel like top four might be a bit of a reach for them, even if they do win, because obviously Chelsea, as we know, under Thomas Tuchel, resurgent. Obviously the loss against West Brom, I don't want to sort of bring that up again and sort of give you nightmares again, but that was very much to do with obviously going down to 10 men when they were 1-0 up. Obviously, you don't really want to concede 5, but at the same time, when against 10 men, as we proved against Southampton, it's a whole different ball game. The game's, with that amount of time left as well, the game's pretty much done, unfortunately. And maybe they could have played it more astutely, but like I said, 10 men is a different story. And other than that, Chelsea have been very efficient, very good defensively. Obviously still getting a few goals, obviously Mason Mount chipping in with a few as well. And obviously, as you spoke about, Havertz and so forth. So I feel like sort of overall for Spurs, League Cup, hopefully they can win that if you're a Spurs fan. And obviously if you're a non-City fan, in my opinion. But I feel like even if they do win today, I feel like top four will be too far from them. I don't think they'll get it.
Okay, I think that's a very good opinion. Do you think Spurs have definitely underachieved this season? Obviously, that comeback loss to Zagreb and the Europa League kind of
that was very funny, though, to be honest.
Kind of just summed up Spurs. Obviously, Mourinho's been taking shots at his players. He had quotes there against West Brom when he got asked about. Obviously, he's been really good at seeing out George in the past, and he said he's the same coach but it's different players. Do you think slowly but surely Mourinho's going back to what he did at the end of his Manchester United reign and blames the board, blames the players? A toxic atmosphere comes apart and he'll be gone?
I feel like he's trying to. He's obviously, he is obviously the post-match interview against, after the Zagreb loss was quite quite eye-opening. Obviously, as you sort of spoke about, there was definitely a dejected feel about it. I mean, he was right, because if you think about it, obviously, if you look at the two teams on paper between Zagreb and Spurs have clearly got the superior team. I think anyone would say that in terms of, and obviously the finances behind them. So the only thing that can mean that a team that's that far behind in terms of talent is work ethic. And ultimately, Spurs, I couldn't believe it. I thought after the 2-0 win, they'd obviously no away goal conceded in that first leg. I thought they were home and hosed. But then, obviously, I think Orsic is the name, isn't it? The one that scored the hat trick for Zagreb. He had the game of his life. He was sort of turned into a fusion of Messi and Ronaldo. He was that good. But Spurs were diabolical. Harry Kane, sometimes I feel like when the pressure's really on, in certain matches, he will struggle. I mean, obviously, if we're thinking about it, it's obviously a semi-final against Croatia in 2018 when he should have passed to Raheem Sterling when he could have made it 2-0. That will stick long in the memory if that's the closest we come to when England comes to winning some silverware in my lifetime. But I think Spurs, as a sort of overall theme for that in terms of their sort of results, I feel like Jose Mourinho is trying to. What tends to happen with Spurs is they tend to obviously score first or something like that, but they tend to keep it quite tight and really sort of sit back. And there's been a lot of late goals against them, which have obviously there've been a lot of draws and late goals and things that have really cost them. And they are slightly underachieving. And there is a chance as well, as most people would say, that Mourinho has his best is gone, because there are very few managers who obviously as they get older and eventually their sort of prime, their sort of tactics or their ideas become outdated or outmoded. And there's a chance that Mourinho, who was in his youth, obviously, as you all know very well, from Chelsea, and obviously with Porto and with Madrid and Milan and Inter Milan, I should say, he has had a phenomenal managerial career. But there's a chance, obviously, after the debacle and the second spell at Chelsea, after obviously winning the title. And also with obviously United, how that ended and how it really, he obviously got some success, but I don't know whether I think what will be quite interesting is that League Cup final as the final sort of point. I think it will be, if they win that might be the sort of spur that sure it is, might be the spur that Spurs need to really start winning trophies, because that first sort of step is so important. I mean, we all know it, don't we? We all know that the first trophy is always the hardest, but get over that line. Obviously, Man City with Aguero they almost sort of bottled it at that point, and Aguero then sort of stepped up and got the winner in 2012 for the Premier League when they were trying to win that. But that first step is always most important one, because it sort of breeds that winning mentality. As Chiellini once said, obviously when Juve played Spurs, it's the history of the Tottenham. In terms of sort of the sort of bottling nature that they have. I remember, on a video I sort of wrote about quite a few years ago now, I sort of said that Spurs were, very unlikely to win anything. I think it was on a different channel, and I don't know if someone will remember that from. I think I wrote about 4 or 5 years ago. I think I said Spurs are really going to struggle to win anything, and I don't know whether someone's going to go back and sort of comment on that they finally won something if they win the League Cup. But that's, as I said, that's going to be the acid test, really. Win the League Cup, and I think that next season they can really sort of challenge, because Mourinho, as we know, as you'll know again far better than I will, he always likes to win the sort of League Cup, FA Cup, those sort of things in the first sort of season or so, and then sort of build towards the league title or build towards his next project.
So we'll move on to Chelsea. So I'll give my brief description of Chelsea, and you can talk about Manchester United. Chelsea's an interesting one. Obviously, we had Frank Lampard at the start of the season. We actually had, I think we had 13 games unbeaten. We've only conceded 2 goals or something under Lampard during the spell. But then after that spell, I said, dear God, did things get bad, really, really bad. I think I have no bad feelings towards Frank Lampard. I don't think it was the guy's fault. A lot of the signings that were made were not by him. He wanted Chilwell, and that was it. Further, Havertz, Ziyech, Mendy, all of that were all board signings. So he was given more than what the guy wanted. He wanted Declan Rice, which he did not get. So I don't think he knew how to solve the problems too, because obviously Havertz was playing on the right wing, Fernand's on the left wing. That's not their positions. They struggled, they lost confidence. I have no harsh feelings towards Lampard. It was a job that was too big, too soon for him, and I think sacking him was the right call. I think he should have only maybe been given a 1-year deal, or just not given the job at all for last year during the transfer ban, because I think it was just harsh on him, because I think everyone wanted it to work, but you just knew it wasn't going to work. Okay. Obviously, since Thomas Tuchel came in, been incredible. I think we've only lost 1 game, I think, since he's came in, which was obviously the West Brom game. And I think we've been really, really good. We've been scoring a ton of goals. defensively, we've been far better. We're a tough team to score against. You outplayed Crystal Palace there. I think we're near enough one step foot into the semi-final of a Champions League. I can't see Porto bringing it back. I really can't see Porto bringing it back. So I'm very happy with our season. It's hard to know because I got asked a question on the World Football Podcast I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Am I happy with the current season? No. But no, I was asked it last night, and I said yes, because getting to an FA Cup semi-final, top 4, and the Champions League semi-final, how can you not say yes? So my answer could be completely different by the end of the season, but top 4 is going to be difficult because we still have to play Arsenal, West Ham, Leicester, Manchester City.
I think you will get top 4.
I think we will. I think we will get points against Arsenal. I think we'll get points against Arsenal, Leicester, and West Ham respectively. Even if it's just draws, I think we'll beat the other smaller teams like Aston Villa away. I know, and Fulham will beat them, I think. So I think that'll be enough to get us into the top 4. Talking about the Champions League, I think we could probably beat Real Madrid or Liverpool if we get past Porto, which I think we will. But I think into the Champions League semi-finals is remarkable, and I think we could make it to the final. I think this squad. If this squad keeps improving game by game by game as they have been, and the defence stays strong, you have to say Chelsea are in form favourites for the Champions League compared to the other teams. So it's obviously me being biased too. I'll not deny that, but I'm being hopeful because this is probably the first year. This is probably one of the first Champions Leagues in years where there's no clear favourites for who's going to win it, because all teams are on a very level playing field. So it's open for business.
Yes. Just on sort of Chelsea, if I sort of my thoughts on them, you are right. Obviously, it's really been a sort of season of 2 halves. But albeit, obviously, as you've spoken about, Frank Lampard had actually got Chelsea in quite good form in that initial period. I think it was early December, wasn't it, where Chelsea were top of the league, I believe, and then they sort of really fell off, and obviously fell off a cliff quite badly for Frank Lampard. And obviously, Thomas Tuchel, since he's been in, has really sort of turned things around, which you'll always get when you've got obviously a world-class manager like that. There is a suggestion that obviously Frank for the Chelsea job came along too early for Frank Lampard, but certainly obviously with Chelsea, they sort of saying they don't suffer fools gladly is never sort of more appropriate than with Chelsea. The sort of managerial turnover at Chelsea over the past, since obviously Abramovich came in, has been extreme, hasn't it? I don't know how many managers it's been, certainly 15, 16, something like that, of managers that have come in and out through the door. But success is the only thing that matters really for Chelsea. And it's certainly something they've got into a habit over that period. An incredible trophy haul. In terms of this season overall, I feel like in the semi-final, obviously, I would want you guys to win against City in that semi-final, because, like I said, obviously we've already spoken about the chances of potentially Man City getting the quadruple. I don't feel like that will happen, but we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. And I feel like you've got a good chance in that semi-final against City, but just because of how good Thomas Tuchel is as a tactician, and as you spoken about how well the team's playing. N'Golo Kante, probably definitely one of the players of other teams that I'm the biggest fan of. Obviously, both as a person, he's incredible. Such a kind, humble player. Person. Sorry, and as a player, phenomenal. Covers so much ground. Incredible in the tackle, good passer. Fantastic player. I really wanted Kante in 2016. I think that was when you got him, wasn't it? Just after Leicester won the league. I really wanted him. Then I said I was sort of spamming with try and get Kante to United then, and obviously he was the real sort of like linchpin in both the league seasons. Obviously, there were both those league seasons, both for Leicester, obviously in 2015-16, when he was literally, you'd sort of watch games with him, and he was picking up everything. He was literally everywhere, and that was how Leicester won that league. And obviously, again with Chelsea, the following season, when he finally got the recognition with obviously the Players' Award, which he probably should have picked up the previous year as well. And I'm a real fan of Kante. Pulisic, obviously, I spoke about. You're a real fan of him. And obviously, you've got certain players who are starting to step up as well. Kai Havertz, like I said, needs to probably work on his shooting a bit. But obviously, a real baller. And obviously, the final thing I would final player I would speak about is Timo Werner. Mm-hmm. Oh, and obviously, sorry, just on that other thing, Mendy has been a good signing as well. He's very good. He's very sort of solid in goal. And that's what you cannot achieve anything if you don't have a solid goalkeeper. That's obviously the first rule. Unfortunately, obviously, as Liverpool will know with Karius, and again, obviously, with the way that Alisson's sort of fallen off a cliff as well. But the keeper's the most. But the keeper is so important, and obviously Mendy's been good. But in terms of and a good goal by Chilwell as well against Porto, wasn't it? That was a very good goal. That second one. But like I said, the final player I just want to speak about is Timo Werner. When he came to the league, I actually predicted at the very start of the season, I predicted he would win the Golden Boot because obviously of his incredible performance for Leipzig, and he was. I thought he was sort of like very clinical, very efficient for them, and I thought he was going to translate that to Chelsea. And obviously, all the money you spent in the summer, I was thinking, this is going to be a real sort of title challenge. Given how much, I don't know the exact figures, but given how much money and how many players you brought in, I felt like a title challenge should have been realistic, and I felt like he was going to sort of score the goals that he needed. But certainly, I think his season this has sort of been very poor. I feel like his confidence levels are shot and on the floor.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I feel like any sort of like one-on-one, he will pass the ball now. He does it all the time. He passed. Mount scored a goal, didn't he? I think someone scored
against West Brom.
In fact, yes, exactly. Yeah, there was you're exactly right. Yeah, so he should have probably shot, but and it was like, oh, unselfish. No, it's because he'd rather die than shoot because his confidence is so low. And it was again against. Yesterday against Palace, I think it was. There was another one where, who was it? I can't remember who it was. He passed it to when he was offside. There was an offside, I think, off someone. I can't remember who it was. He instead of like shooting, he just passed it sideways, and he does it all the time. So I think that's got to be a real job. I know, obviously, I saw some training clips as well with all the players sort of like giving round applause and cheering when he scored and all sorts, and all the players trying to do their best to instill some confidence in him. But that's going to be Thomas Tuchel's real sort of like project, I think, is to get Timo Werner firing, get him confident and firing in the goals that you're going to need. Obviously, rumours of Erling Haaland will obviously Chelsea potentially going in for him. But obviously, as Haaland, I think, famously said that he didn't. Obviously, players always say this sort of stuff, but then when the money's there, they'll go for the club. I think Chelsea weren't among the clubs that he wanted to go to. Because they're not a sort of historic club in the way that the other clubs were. But again, obviously, money talks, and if Rayola's there, he's going to sell him to the highest bidder. So potentially Haaland might come, but if he's looking to work with the players that he's got, Thomas Tuchel, I believe he can, because I think he's a fantastic manager. For Werner, he's got to work with, and obviously Mason Mount's been a real revelation, hasn't he, for you guys?
Absolutely.
So yeah, good overall performance for Chelsea, but it can be an excellent season if you guys win silverware. The Champions League, you are right, there is a good chance of that, but only because Bayern Munich, I mean, I don't know if we're going to sort of discuss the Champions League in a bit more detail, but Bayern Munich, they should have absolutely destroyed PSG. Like that game was, you look at the sort of scoreline and you think that PSG have, really sort of done well, but they were very clinical with their chances. But Bayern Munich, I think 31 chances, 31 attempts, and it wasn't even that close. It should have been about 6-3. It's just that obviously Choupo-Moting is terrible. He really is. He scored a header, but he missed so many open goals, so many chances, and he's just not Lewandowski. If they'd had Lewandowski and Gnabry maybe as well, but particularly Lewandowski, that game would have been like 6-3 easily. And obviously I don't think he's not back for the next leg that's coming in at midweek, but I still think Bayern will go through. I know it's unlikely, but I still think. But the way that game went, Bayern Munich were incredible. For me, they are the best team in Europe. We have the sort of bias of Man City, but I feel like Bayern Munich have everything.
So moving on to the last game, obviously your club Manchester United. You've only lost 4 games. You've only lost 4 games all year. You have conceded 25 goals. You've conceded 33 goals for a well score of 58. You've had 9 draws, and now those 9 draws have literally came against all the big teams, probably but one. So I know you. I don't know if your mind changed. And obviously, you're still not the biggest fan of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And also, I asked you a question before we hit the record button. What's big for you? Is it top 4 or is it a trophy? So, why do you explain what you thought about this season for Man United? My question to you would be, if you finish top 4 but lose here in the Europa League, say you lose in the semi-final or the final, because you'll get past Granada, I would say. Do you think Solskjaer is still the right man without trophies in 3 seasons, but he's getting you top 4, or do you think that he's not the man to win you a trophy?
Yeah, again, I'll try not to be too long on this, but because, like I said, I could go on for days about both Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. For me, he did exceptionally well when he came in as a caretaker manager. Obviously got the permanent job after the PSG heroics when we did something that no club has ever done, obviously coming back, which is what Porto will be trying to do against Chelsea, coming back from a 2-0 away loss in the second leg. Emotions were high, but ultimately I was one of very few Manchester United fans who still didn't want to give him the job until May at that point. But again, obviously the businessmen decided to ride on the crest of the emotion, give him the job, and obviously that we know how that went. Didn't get top 4. Really had a horrific end to that season. Obviously last season he was really sort of finding his way. Terrible in the first half of the season. Obviously that was very much hampered though by the fact that Paul Pogba was injured. We had zero creativity, playing Andreas Pereira at the number 10 mostly, with McTominay and Fred behind them, which is the sort of midfield that you'd see at Stoke. We really did struggle. But obviously, as we all know, Bruno Fernandes came in the January window of last season and was arguably one of the in fact not arguably, really one of the best players the Premier League over the past year and a bit that he's been here, in terms of goals, assists, and the leadership that he's demonstrating, the character and resolve. He's been absolutely phenomenal. But obviously we got third, helped in no small part by the fact that Leicester capitulated from a seemingly unassailable position, but also by the fact that we were winning so many matches. Also helped by the fact that Pogba and Matic came back as well after lockdown, when we really sort of decided to get motoring. Got third position. I was really hopeful, for coming into this season as well. I was hopeful that he was going to really sort of kick on. But bring it over to this season, I feel like with United, it's very difficult because often our signings aren't our manager's first choice. I feel like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has not really got his first choice at all while he's been here. In certain respects, I feel like obviously he wanted Erling Haaland. Initially when he went from was it Mold? I think it was Mold to Dortmund. I can't remember. I think it was Mold. Yeah, but whichever team he went from to Dortmund from, I feel like he was. I can't remember which team it was. Yeah, but anyway, whichever team went to Dortmund, at that juncture, he went to Dortmund. And like I said, I feel like Manchester United should have got him. But obviously, in the end, we ended up getting quite a rushed loan deal or 1 or 2 year deal for Edinson Cavani. And he's been quite injury prone, unfortunately. So he's not really sort of solved the problem. He's very temporary, short term. He wants to go back home, obviously, in the summer, and he's probably going to leave. Donny van de Beek was very much the cheap option. Obviously, Edwin van der Sar got good links with Manchester United, but we really wanted Jack Grealish. But obviously, Aston Villa managed to stay up, which meant that they could then increase their price. And obviously, he was very good until his injury for Aston Villa this season. Up until that point, and I hope he goes to the Euros as well. With regards to Grealish, and then obviously Amad Diallo was only going to come in January. But and he doesn't really get much game time. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has really struggled to sort of rotate the squad. He tends to play players until they're literally dog tired or they're injured. He doesn't really tend to have too many in-game tactics. I feel like if we're taking the sort of whole season into consideration, in the Champions League we got given the group of death. Should have progressed ultimately though, because we made a great start. We made a great start to that. Obviously, we only needed 1 point out of those final 2 games. One at home to either at home to PSG or away to Leipzig. In that home match, didn't take Fred off. When literally everyone was crying for it because he should have got sent off in that first half for that despicable, stupid, reckless, hideous. How many words on the PSG? It was ridiculous. It really was. But then obviously got sent off, as we know, because even though he didn't touch the PSG player, obviously it was a second yellow card, which meant the VAR couldn't overturn it or couldn't go back to it. When you're playing against PSG, as we saw again, obviously sort of midweek, they are sort of the CEOs of play acting. They are the ultimate sort of play acting team. So they're always going to try and I think it was Herrera as well, wasn't it? And he's Herrera was a good player for us, but he's also a massive play actor. So that was ridiculous decision to keep Fred on. Obviously got sent off, and we ended up losing that game 3-1. And then obviously Leipzig match. As we know, Paul Pogba had his sort of like, with Mio Raiola sort of came out and said they didn't want to be at the club just before on the eve of it. Lots of fans, again, the majority I feel like didn't want Pogba to play again for the club, wanted him gone in January because of how disrespectful he'd been. I was again one of those very few fans who said play Paul Pogba from the start, because it's a win-win for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Either we win, and obviously we get through to the Champions League, and the knockout stage of the Champions League, and all's rosy. But if we lose, he's like, well, Paul Pogba played from the start. It's all Paul Pogba's fault, and he could use him as a scapegoat. Sadly, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't see that as a logical decision. And also the fact is, ultimately with Paul Pogba, we're a much better team. Again, that's undebatable inarguable rather, in my opinion. Paul Pogba comes on with a 3-0 down. Almost sort of dead and buried. Paul Pogba has the through ball, which Greenwood obviously wins the penalty. This is in the final sort of few minutes. Obviously scores the second goal from the header from a corner, and then almost crosses it into, and they almost score an own goal to make it 3-3, and we would have gone through, which showed what a laughable decision it was to keep him on the bench. In my opinion, he was by far the best player. And again, obviously, we sort of went out in the Champions League very disappointed, angry, because obviously sort of one imposter in the out of the English teams really that didn't get through. Obviously didn't know, because obviously all the other three are now in the quarterfinals, aren't they? Liverpool, Chelsea, and City. One team let down the side, so to speak, in terms of English football. And with the best will in the world, I think we are one of those 4 teams we should be, even against Leipzig, who obviously Liverpool have sort of dismantled. We know how in and out of form they've been. Leipzig are not. We should have been beating them. And obviously PSG, I feel like again that was a terrible thing. Obviously Europa League can offer some sort of sustenance, but again, you don't really trust Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to get things right against better coaches. I feel like Granada probably outperformed us on midweek, but ultimately they've got no quality. Which again, on those sort of budgets, you're always going to have to find. In terms of the Carabao Cup, obviously semi-final again against Man City. It seems like a sort of concurrent theme with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and this team, semi-finals and losing and bottling. Really, really terrible in that match. Again, obviously City have been phenomenal this season in terms of what Ruben Diaz has offered, but again, we should have done better in that. And then obviously the final thing is the Premier League, which like quite a few teams, we did have a chance. We were top earlier in the season. Well, there were lots of teams actually who have been top this season in January, but then again, pragmatic Ollie ball, as I call it, saw fit to enable us to draw so many games, which we have drawn quite a lot this season. Obviously, all these 0-0s against top teams where we sort of parking the bus, and really drab games in which United are the common factor. And I think that's been the most disappointing thing for me, because I did hope and thought we would win the title, because I felt like Liverpool would fall away slightly, and I felt like our form since Bruno Fernandes had come in up until the start, obviously in that final sort of end of the season, we'd won them at sort of most points, I believe, in that sort of period. So I felt like if that was sort of like transposed or extended over the next season, then obviously if we're going to keep getting more points than anyone, we're going to win the league. And certainly, obviously, statistically, would tell you. I think as I sort of mentioned, so I think it's 23 games, I believe, unbeaten away in the Premier League, which is one of the best records of any sort of top flight English team. But obviously, if you look at like the sort of record of all the other teams that are in that top 5 or 6 of those records, we're the highest one of any team that's not won the title in that period. I think Nottingham Forest have got it for 77-78, which was when they won their only league title. You've obviously got Arsenal in the invincible season and in 01-02 and also in 97-98, I think, are also really high. But obviously, all these teams won titles. And it's almost like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has sort of shot his bolt really in some ways, because we've got this incredible record away from home in the Premier League, but there've been lots of draws in that. And like I said, we should have won a title. I think the 2 teams that were below us that haven't won the title were, one of them was Chelsea 07-08. And that was because obviously Man United had Cristiano Ronaldo and other players. So we were always going to win that, because we just had, that was almost like our best team in my lifetime, United 08. Phenomenal team. But that was the most disappointing thing for me, was obviously we've got this incredible record and away from home, like I've sort of spoken about. We got to the top of the league in January, and then unacceptably things derailed to such a point that within 2 months we had no chance. And obviously even beating City at the Etihad, which we knew we had to do at that point, that still didn't mean that we're obviously, even now that City have lost against Leeds, which we've spoken about, even if we win our 2 matches in hand, we're still 8 points behind them with 6 games remaining, and that's going to be very difficult, if nigh on impossible, to dethrone. So that for me has been the most unacceptable thing, as all our hopes have been raised by where we were in January, and then they were dashed relatively instantaneously by March, thanks to very damaging draws where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer against West Brom, for example, played 2 CDMs, which is absolutely unacceptable. We needed to win. So yeah, very disappointing season for me. Silver lining can be obviously top 4, but and obviously winning the Europa League, but that's not good enough for a club of Manchester United's stature. And obviously we can speak about Ole. I don't want to sort of bore on too much anymore, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is almost like a totally different topic, really.
Fair enough. And just even though this is not live, just for your curiosity, that Newcastle scored 2 goals in 4 minutes and now beating Burnley 2-1. So that's a massive. That's
I think they heard that I said they haven't got much quality offensively, and they heard that and they were like, "All right, let's go, let's go." And score 2 goals.
Well, Steve Bruce sprung on St Maximan and Callum Wilson off the bench and they scored 2 goals. I don't think that's a convenience at all. That's our Premier League talk done with. So we're going to do some very brief talk about the Champions League in Europe. Again, it's kind of hard too because the second legs are still to come up, and obviously when this is being recorded, it's a bit awkward. So we're going to do an early prediction preview of what we think so far. So we'll start off with the Champions League. So the Champions League, this is going to be, as I said, this is one of the Champions League. I think one of the first Champions Leagues in probably a long time where there's no clear favourites. There's no one you punch your eye to and go there going to win the Champions League. So we're going to do our early predictions for the semi-final games. So obviously Chelsea Porto at Stamford Bridge. That's a lie. It's in Seville again, same place where Chelsea got the 2 away goals, which I don't understand the logic in that, but that's just the way it is. You can't see Chelsea bottling this, can you? I think this is all points to probably maybe a 4-0 win over the 2 legs for Chelsea.
I would think, obviously, again, I'd quite like it if they did, because it would be quite funny. But at the same time, the chances of, I think that game of all 4 is probably the one that's most done and dusted. Porto have got almost sort of reached their ceiling. I feel like they are the weakest team that's left out of those 8. And Chelsea were quite fortunate, really. Obviously, any team would have to draw them, but Chelsea were quite fortunate to get them in some respects. Obviously, Mount scored an incredible goal again. Obviously, like Chilwell, I think it was, that got the second. But yeah, it was incredible. Obviously, but again, I feel like Porto haven't got the quality that's necessary to, without Chelsea at least scoring 1 or 2, I feel like that game is done and dusted. I feel like Chelsea will be making the semi-finals, would be my prediction. But again, stranger things have happened. As we know, obviously, so I spoke about Man United versus PSG, which was the time when obviously the away goals were 2-0 away wasn't quite enough. But obviously United have got a lot more quality than Porto. So what you would need for Porto to qualify, would you need Chelsea to play terribly, absolutely terribly, but you'd also need Pepe to have the game of his life again, to keep them out. And obviously then you need some Porto players to sort of get some goals. I can't see it happening now. I think Chelsea are going to go through in that one.
Yeah, I think Porto get an early goal in the first 25 minutes, and I think that's you start hitting the panic button. But Chelsea will probably score in this game. Porto will have to come in and attack. That will work to Chelsea's ability. So I expect Chelsea to get maybe another 1 or 2 goals. I expect Chelsea to score probably in the first half, and I'll probably put the game to bed. So I don't think Porto were a decent side. They played actually really, really well against us, to give credit to them. I don't think they actually played. I think the 2-0 result was a matter of it was not the fact that we played well. It was just we had the more quality to take those chances. I think Mendy made a couple of really good saves against Porto. But I think we'll get through to the semi-final, which I'm going to try and just not get too cocky because we all know anything can happen in football. Next one is, you've already spoken about this, PSG and Bayern Munich. PSG have the 3 away goals compared to Bayern Munich. Obviously, actually got a late goal to make this game close. This is going to be a really exciting, tight game. Obviously, PSG are known to bottle it in the European knockouts. But Bayern Munich are obviously missing Lewandowski. As you said, they're going to have to rely on Choupo-Moting again to bag him a few goals up front. So how do you see this one go?
To be honest, obviously, the match. I know. Apologies. Obviously, I only saw the sort of highlights or bits of Chelsea Porto because obviously, Bayern Munich PSG was on at the same time, and I had to watch that. And it was, it was an incredible game of football. Like, I could probably bore on for hours, just talking about how good that game of football was. It is very difficult. Obviously, Lewandowski, like I sort of spoke about, Choupo-Moting was obviously got his headed goal from a Pavard cross, which was the first goal. But overall, his sort of hold-up play isn't Lewandowski level, which no one's really is, because like I said, I think he's the best striker in the world. But his finishing isn't too good either. They just didn't take the chances. They created obviously 31 attempts. Joshua Kimmich was for me was the best player on that pitch. Again, he's one of the bit like Kante, who I rate so highly as a player. I think he's just phenomenal. Like free kicks, corners, but also just his general passing, play distribution's sensational. Bayern Munich, like I said, should have won that game 6-3. I think obviously Muller spoke about it as well, but that was my sort of initial feelings after the match as well, because they were so dominant. They literally. Bayern Munich, there are so many superlatives that you can say about them. They are the best team in Europe. If you think about sort of the way that City play, Bayern Munich are on a totally different level even from them. They're just, obviously Bayern Munich have, sort of like the perfect concoction or like collection of all styles. They can literally do absolutely anything. Like City, almost like it's very easy to sort of like, know what they're about. They're sort of like passing triangles and just passing people to death. But Bayern Munich can go direct. They can go obviously to that down the wings there with pace and obviously with crossing, obviously which Choupo-Moting, like I said, was on the end of quite a few times to mess up or whatever. And obviously Kimmich delivered some stunning free kicks again. Goretzka should have scored in the first half as well from a Kimmich free kick. And there was a corner as well. Oh, that was it. Corner from that was exactly the first half. Actually, there was a corner from Kimmich which went all the way to the back post, and Choupo-Moting was the back post with the white who just like horsed it miles over which Lewandowski would have scored. And that's unfortunately, obviously Lewandowski we've sort of spoken about, but also Serge Gnabry is also out. I think he got contracted corona, I think, and he's still, I think he will still be in his period for that. If he's not, then that might change things. But obviously, to speak about PSG, they were, Navas had the game of his life, but also they were very clinical. Some of the defending from Bayern Munich was terrible, but Mbappe obviously on the counter attack, he was very lucky on the first goal, but that second goal was absolutely world class and killed the game really. And it just seemed like one of those days of Bayern Munich where they just couldn't score, or couldn't score enough, I should say, or couldn't score as many as they deserved to score. And PSG were very clinical with Mbappe and obviously Marquinhos with the other goal. But for me, and this is going to be quite controversial, I think I may have already mentioned it already, I feel like Bayern Munich will go through. I just have that sort of feeling where if the game is the same as it is now, the only sort of like thing to that is that can Bayern Munich be clinical? If Bayern Munich can score the amount of goals that they should do, they will go through. Because, like I said, if you sort of look at that game from the outside, it seems like PSG were the better team, but Bayern Munich were by far the better team. It wasn't even close, but it was just that PSG were very clinical on their chances that they had, and Bayern were very, very wasteful. So I feel like Bayern will go through. Very low chance, obviously, without Lewandowski's probably not going to be there or Gnabry, but I still feel like they will go through. But again, that's relatively controversial, but I feel like they'll go through.
I think I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go with PSG. I think PSG, they've got those away goals which are playing into their hands. I think they'll score. I think Mbappe against those two really slow on PSG centre backs of Bayern Munich causes all sorts of problems. I think Neymar and Mbappe, same as the game against Barcelona, the reasons why PSG are doing so well. I still think defensively PSG don't look particularly great. Even the fact that they're not, I don't know if they are now, but the fact that they weren't even top of the French league for a period of time was quite bad within itself. I think PSG will get through. I think they'll score 2 goals, and I think that'll be enough. I don't think I just think Lewandowski's just not got. If Lewandowski was there, I would agree with you. But Timo Werner isn't going to do anything.
He is terrible, yeah.
He isn't going to do anything we're all beaten. So I think that literally is the difference between the two teams, and that's why I think PSG are going to go through. Moving on to the other Germany team who got robbed of a second away goal at the Etihad. I don't know how. I just don't know how that was not given. I actually think Dortmund are going to go through. I think Dortmund are going to beat Manchester City. I think they're going to win 2-1 in Germany and go through.
Oh, so that'll only be a thingy though. We'll have extra time, won't it?
Yeah,
they won 2-1 in the. Obviously, City won 2-1 as well. But
I think Pep's going to bottle it once again because that Dortmund team really, really impressed me in that first leg. They knew how to counter. They played through the press of City really, really well. They actually defensively were actually quite good. They created some really, really good chances. Again, they should have had. I thought they pressed really, really well. They did everything right that you need to do against a Manchester City team, and I think they'll do it even better in Germany. I think Pep's going to overthink it and lose again.
Yeah, so I obviously that was the other match that I watched all the way through. So Real Madrid, obviously Liverpool, which we'll go into in a minute. I only sort of got the highlights from, but then obviously the Dortmund Man City game I was watching all the way through. Dortmund did have very good tight defence. I thought Jude Bellingham was outstanding, deserved his goal. I mean, that refereeing for that goal again. I don't want to be too because obviously all the words really have been said about that referee, but that was absolutely disgraceful and despicable decision. It really was. The fact that he's blowing the whistle so that it can't be overturned by VAR after he should have tapped that into the net is absolutely disgusting. That obviously Bellingham's been robbed there, and obviously it could have been quite a vital second goal for Dortmund on an away goal. Not only that, but obviously the referee had not only obviously made that terrible decision, but also it was almost like he was a Man City fan. Or he'd been paid by Man City. It was that bad. So there was obviously the penalty as well that he tried to give against. I think it was Emre Can, wasn't it, when he sort of put his foot up, and then I think it was Rodri, wasn't it? He was sort of like rolling around on the floor, pretending he'd got hit in the face when he was doing. I think he might have brushed his leg, and he was sort of rolling around, clutching his face. Terrible decision that obviously sort of giving away a penalty. But again, obviously, it was overturned by VAR when the referee sort of had to look at the monitor and found out that he was totally wrong. But obviously, yeah, I'm not so sure. There is a big part of me that does think Dortmund will go through, but I'm with this City team a lot of the time when I sort of like think that the other team will eliminate them. Than City, so I'm going to say that City will go through only because secretly I think Dortmund will go through, but I want to put it sort of manifest it so that obviously it's going to be the result I want in a way. But I think, but Dortmund obviously, very very good. Obviously Bellingham, like I said, he's going to be a star of the future. Was 17 years old, and he's already sort of like dominating in midfield. Was involved in the goal obviously that Royce scored. He was the initial sort of build up, very cute sort of possession from him, and obviously a good Haaland assist for Royce's goal, very well taken. I think Dortmund have got a very good chance. That's what I would say. But like I said, I'm going to sort of say City will go through. And the final sort of point I was going to say was a real sort of highlight for me was, although I think Ruben Diaz is probably the best player of this season in the Premier League, a highlight for me was Erling Haaland when he was going against Erling Haaland, and Haaland just sort of shrugged him off like a rag doll, and like they were going side to side, just went like that and threw him on the floor, and obviously almost scored. Obviously, he was just unlucky that Ederson came out so quickly. But that was a real sort of highlight. But I think City will go through. But obviously, secretly, like I said, I think Dortmund will go through. But I'm going to manifest it so that City will go through, so that I get what I really want.
I thought Marco Reus was incredible at the Etihad. I think he played incredibly well. I think Martin Hitz made a couple of really good saves too. I have to say, it was one of these cases where we all know, Dortmund, was 3-2 against Stuttgart at the weekend there. One of these cases where they play really, really bad in the league, but they're incredible in the Champions League. It's just you get cases like let's say the final Champions League game.
Oh, the final thing, sorry, just before you go into the final Champions League game is in terms of like who was, I think Emre Can was very bad that game. I think all the other 10 Dortmund players were fantastic. Obviously Guerrero as well, I'm a real big fan of. There's lots of other players that I'm a massive fan of in that Dortmund team, but Can was so bad. The first goal, he totally cost obviously Dortmund that goal with a terrible pass out, and obviously got intercepted, and City went down the other end and scored obviously with De Bruyne. But I think very much so Dortmund need to make sure that he's not playing, because if Chan's playing, I feel like City will probably go through. If Can isn't playing, then Dortmund have got a real chance. That's just my final sort of point on that, is that Can, although as you sort of spoke about, Dortmund were great, Can was sort of like the odd one out who was terrible.
So the final game, Liverpool Real Madrid. Obviously, Real Madrid are 3-1 up. Liverpool were atrociously bad in that first half. You know, I watched it. It was shocking from Real. Sorry, from Liverpool that first half. They created nothing defensively. We're getting caught out. Toni Kroos was prime Toni Kroos in that match. His balls were Phineas Jr. ran Liverpool ragged. Obviously, it would be a very different story if Liverpool had fans at Anfield. I think it would make this game a lot more interesting. But even when I watched, Liverpool against Aston Villa, they were okay. Mane, he doesn't look anywhere near the player that he was last year. Jota is probably their best. Jota and Salah are doing well, but can Jota and Salah really win this game solely against Real Madrid? Because I think, especially after El Clasico there against Barcelona, it seems like this Real Madrid team's starting to pick up a bit of form. I just can't see Liverpool getting past them.
I think Real Madrid will go through as well. Yeah, I think 3-1 is too far for Liverpool. Obviously, like I said, I also watched the highlights of it, and there were quite a few different bits and pieces that you want to pick out. I think obviously Real Madrid are very positive, and I feel like Ferland, Mendy, and Vinicius Jr. have formed a really good partnership on the left flank. I feel like they've really sort of got that sorted, and Mendy was very good. Obviously, not only offensively but also defensively. He stopped quite an important chance that could have possibly made it 2-2. I think that was at that juncture. You've obviously spoken about Toni Kroos, another player that I see. It feels like I'm sort of admiring quite a lot of players, but Toni Kroos is another sort of generational player who has just been phenomenal for many, many years. And United were originally linked to him, I think, back in 2014, 2013, somewhere like that. And yeah, he's been incredible for Real Madrid. And obviously, there was an incredible GIF of his assist, obviously for the first goal. That ball was absolutely stunning. It was straight out of the textbook. And obviously Vinicius Jr. scored it, and incredible. But Liverpool's defence was atrocious. Obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold is one moment the villain and one moment the hero, isn't he? Obviously the hero the weekend against Villa with that great goal, but obviously against Real Madrid, passing it straight to Asensio for him to lob it over Alisson. Make him look absolutely terrible. And obviously Kabach as well almost, gave it to Asensio as well, didn't he? And there was almost 3-0 in that first half. Liverpool defensively are absolutely terrible without Van Dijk, unfortunately. It's their players, and obviously Alisson has really chosen a bad moment to have a real bad. Obviously, there was the moments against City, as we all know, in that in the league a few weeks ago or so, where he was absolutely atrocious. And again, obviously, this against, I think it was obviously the Villa goal as well. Again, I was just so I can bring up Alisson, that Villa goal, obviously at the weekend. Sorry, yesterday, I should say. Again, he should save that. George went straight through him. It was from Ollie Watkins. He's really, really poor at the moment. I think so. Although Liverpool, as you said, if it was the fans were in the ground, that would be a massive different story, because Liverpool, as we know, against Barcelona a couple of seasons ago, City fans, and obviously quite a few times actually, they've always managed to sort of dig something out at Anfield. But without fans, and also with the way that Real Madrid are playing, and also the way that Liverpool are playing, I feel like Real Madrid are going to go through, and I feel like that they should definitely be going through. So yeah, Liverpool going through for me. Oh, sorry, Real Madrid going through for me. Sorry.
So we've got one more competition to quickly sift through, and that is the Europa League.
Yeah.
So there's still some interesting ties, and a lot to be decided here coming into the second leg of the Europa League. So we're going to start off with Manchester United. I think you've pretty much already touched on it. You really can't see you bottling this lead to Granada.
Not at all. I would say, because Granada, huffed and puffed. Like I said, they were probably the better team that match, but ultimately, real lack of quality. Obviously, I think it's Soldado, isn't it, that they've got up front, and he's probably about, I don't know exactly what age he is, but he feels like he's 103. He's been around. He's been around so long. But that's the sort of level, unfortunately. Granada, sort of plucky underdogs. But that was a game that I'm at a tie that I always felt like United would go through, even if obviously I've got my reservation about Ollie and his tactics. I always felt like Granada was such a poor team that was always going to be a relatively foregone conclusion. And so it proved. Obviously an excellent goal from Rashford. Really good,
that guy's playing with an injured ankle and an injured shoulder, yet he's still your best player.
Well, no, exactly. I'll get onto that. Again, I don't want to go too in depth, because obviously of time constraints and so forth. But Daniel James. Actually, I won't be too harsh on him, but yeah, I could say quite a few things about Daniel James. Good goal from. Yeah, I'm really struggling with Dan James, but a really good goal from Rashford, and the second goal, obviously a typical Bruno. Well, not necessarily a typical Bruno penalty actually, because normally he sort of dispatches them with real sort of like vim and vigor and sort of scores quite nicely. But that was quite a lucky penalty actually. Goalkeeper guessed the right way and obviously just sort of crept in. Probably could and should have saved it. But obviously 2-0 down, 2 away goals. A bit like obviously with the Chelsea Porto game sort of thing. You can't really see it because there's lack of talent from the opposition, and obviously there's such a disparity in terms of class. And obviously 2-0 down after the away leg. There's a reason that only United have done that. Obviously, obviously we're against PSG a couple of seasons ago, because it's almost impossible. And I cannot see any way. Even though obviously we got quite a few, and the referee was a bit. It's hard to know, isn't it? Because a bit like you sort of spoken about when you're sort of a bit biased towards Chelsea. I'm a bit biased towards United. I felt that referee was absolutely terrible. I felt like he was obviously. Granada had quite a few sort of dirty players in there that were just hacking us up quite considerably, and it seemed like he was only giving yellow cards to United players, and so we are missing quite a few key men. Obviously, McTominay's now suspended for the second leg, Shaw's suspended, and so is Maguire. But even with all those three sort of out, we've still got enough players to see the job through. So yeah, United going through.
Yeah, okay, I don't know. I completely agree. I think those suspensions are probably good in disguise, because I think those players need rest. I think obviously there are some key players from Man United. I think he could afford it. I think Van de Beek will probably play in this game. I think Dan James will play in this game. Matic will play in this game. Alex Telles obviously will have to play. So
yeah,
I think we'll get.
as well, yeah.
I think he can make a couple of changes, and I still think he'll be comfortably fine. Granada have the second or third worst defense in La Liga. They're sitting 8 for 9. I don't think they have the ability to come back, especially when they've got a pensioner up front. So going on to the game, who say that Manchester United will be playing between Roma and Ajax. Obviously, Roma won 2-1 away in Amsterdam. Now,
Yeah.
Ajax, of course, are nowhere near the team that they were a few years ago when they got to the Champions League semi-final. Obviously, I showed the Lucas Moura goal, which were in their Champions League final hopes, which it's quite sad, but that's kind of said of the intro. This is a difficult one, because it's a hard one to see how this goes. Roma are a decent team, but they're nowhere near what they used to be, and they're probably underachieving, and probably for a squad that they have, especially in Serie A. Yeah, Ajax have the same flair. Obviously, Erik ten Hag's style is still very much of an Ajax team. They just don't have that quality that they would have had, back in the Champions League. But I think 2-1 away win for Roma, and going back to the Stadio Olimpico in Italy, I can't see past Roma going through here. I think Roma. If Roma score here in Italy, I think that would be game done and dusted.
This is probably of all four. Obviously, to be honest with you, there's two of these ties that I think are still live very much, and where lots of different things could happen. Both teams could still go through. I think there are two that are totally dead, which obviously we've already had one, which was the Granada United game, and I think this is one that's very much alive. Obviously, when you sort of watch back, and again, I sort of watching back the highlights, there was lots of terrible defending from both sides, and lots of sort of opportunities, because passing out from the back was a real struggle for both teams. And obviously, so I don't feel like there's definitely, on paper, you would say obviously a 2-1 away win for Roma. You'd think they would go through, and obviously they were my prediction to go through initially when these ties were sort of drawn out a few weeks ago. But the defending from both sides was terrible. It could have been any score. It was just that it just happened to be that obviously Ajax had the missed penalty from Tadic, where he decided to be trying to be clever, sort of hit it down the middle. The goalkeeper didn't move, and obviously it looked like a bit like a mug, unfortunately. That was from playing out from the back again, and obviously it was Ibanez, the one who eventually scored, the fabulous winner. He was the one that gave away that penalty. And obviously the first goal the initial goal for Ajax, again, that was when we're sort of speaking about defending from Roma. Mancini, I think it was, who sort of like the ball comes towards, ball sort of like it's sort of in that sort of middle area, and Mancini is sort of just starts to go for it, then thinks, oh no, and then starts running away from it, backpedaling at top speed when he should have made it. I couldn't understand. It was one of the most bizarre defending things I've seen, in years. It was that bad. That inexplicable. It was just that it was almost like he'd seen a ghost. He'd seen a ghost on the pitch. He was like running away from it at full speed. And obviously Clarkson scored, but the defending was terrible. Obviously, the free kick equaliser from Pellegrini, the goalkeeper should have done better on that. Obviously, I think it was his debut, wasn't it? I think the Ajax.
It was Ajax third choice goalkeeper because obviously Onana got banned for a year due to some. I don't know what it was.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, and then their first choice goalkeeper to him is Martin Stekenberg. He also got injured, so it was their third choice keeper.
And it was a great winner from Ibanez, stunning volley winner. But it could be, to be honest with you, it could be either team. I do think, like you, I concur. I think Roma will go through, but that is one you definitely need to watch out for, because it wasn't a case. It was a case of where whoever defends slightly better will go through, really, because the defending in that match was terrible. And the final thing, just before we obviously move on to the other matches, the final sort of noteworthy thing was obviously the Calafiori, I think is how you pronounce his name, was on for obviously in the final minute of injury time. He was the one that had the ball boy throw the ball at him at top speed, and obviously he has since spoken out and he sort of said, although he doesn't respect the ball boy for doing it, in terms of he shouldn't have done it, but he does understand, he said, because it's really annoying. He sort of basically admitted, he said it's really annoying when the opposition's time wasting, because that's ultimately what he was doing. And obviously you saw the bit before it where he was given the ball and then he sort of kicked it away and then went for the other ball, and that was why the ball boy got so angry and hurled it at top speed at him. And obviously then there was that sort of moment again, this is the sort of sad status that football's in. There was that moment where he sort of thought, I need to go down here and like roll around on the floor, but then he was like, oh no, wait, this isn't an opposition player that's done it to me, it's a ball boy, I can't really do that. So it was very noteworthy incident, really. So I just thought we have to bring that up.
Very brief. You would probably prefer to play Ajax over Roma. I was, as a Manchester United fan, because I think Roma would be a really sticky team to play.
Obviously, ultimately, obviously the bookies have got us odds on favourites, and on paper we should beat any of these teams. So it doesn't bother me too much which team it is. My only sort of concern is United is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's tactics, because ultimately both of those teams, when I looked at their defending, they're very bad. So I can see us if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer goes for it, neither of those teams should cause us much concern. I probably would prefer Ajax slightly, but ultimately, obviously, we beat AC Milan, who I feel are a much better team than either of those two teams. So we should be going through no matter who it is.
Right, Slovakia Prague Arsenal. Again, going to Slovakia Prague is incredibly difficult task. Not very many teams win there. Arsenal don't look in great form. Obviously, they play Sheffield United, which you think they should win. No matter how bad you are, you should beat Sheffield United. This isn't really, really difficult. I'm assuming this is the other open tie that you've been hinting at. It's really difficult because it's very similar to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Arteta's tactics really make you kind of question, will it work, will it not? I'm going to go with Slovakia Prague. Their home form is incredible. Fans or no fans, they've knocked out Leicester and an informed Rangers team, which is impressive enough. That they fight till the end. They play some good football. It was a very bad goal from Arsenal's point of view against the Slovakia Prague equaliser, but they're good defensively. They score goals, and they have something to hang on to. Arsenal kind of have to play into Slovakia Prague's hands with that away goal. So yeah. I'm going to go. I'm going to get hated on in the comments because I know Arsenal fans will be pleased with this. But yeah, I think Slovakia Prague is going through.
Yeah. So Slavia Prague as you sort of spoke about. I mean, again, it's quite good because obviously, again, I was sort of watching the United match, so you can only sort of see the highlights of the various other matches. But obviously, with the Arsenal Slavia Prague match, Arsenal. To be honest with you, we don't want to go too far in because of how passionate the Arsenal fans get. But Arsenal are incredibly profligate, wasteful in terms of chances. Obviously, and Alexander Lacazette, we've already spoken about quite a wasteful striker. Obviously, he had that opportunity when he was obviously stole the ball off the defender, side running through. Knew he only had one thing to do, and then tried the stupid thing. Well, not necessarily the stupid thing, because obviously if it had come off, it'd be a brilliant goal. But didn't play the percentage football there at all. And obviously, a bit like obviously when Chilwell rounded the keeper, obviously he played the percentage football correctly when he did that, and Chilwell did that. But obviously Lacazette tried the extraordinary, didn't come off, and obviously looked a bit of a fool. Saka was very unlucky, obviously, in that first half as well, when he went clean through. Obviously, from the through ball, it was great running and should probably have done better. But obviously, he's a youngster again, so I don't necessarily hold it too much against him. And I do rate Saka as well. What was quite funny, I think, again, was the match was quite tight, which I think will suit Slavia Prague in that second leg, if it is a similar match, because I think the first shot was for Slavia Prague was from Olayinka, which was after about 37 minutes, which was the first shot on target. So it shows how tight the game was, that the first shot on target's about 37th minute. Obviously, Arsenal were just extremely wasteful, couldn't score. Aubameyang, obviously, a lot of sort of memes and things have been talked about with his hair and stuff. I couldn't quite believe what sort of hairstyle he was rocking. But again, it's I feel like from a footballing perspective, he's really sort of declined a bit in terms of his standards. Obviously, a really good goal from Pepe, a good sort of dinked finish. But ultimately, Arsenal being Arsenal again, final sort of few minutes, and Pepe sort of goes from hero to villain within a few minutes' time, because again, it was sort of his innocuous sort of assist really that Holes at the back post was able to capitalise and score the equaliser for Slavia Prague. This is, as you sort of alluded to, this is one of those games, one of the two games I feel like which is very, very difficult to call. Slavia Prague, you've already mentioned, have got an extremely good home record in Europe. I still think Arsenal will go through, but it is through gritted teeth, because I feel like this is probably the hardest game of all four in actual fact to call, because obviously with it being a draw anyway, it has to be really. And so I feel like this is very, very hard to call, but if I'm being very much pressed with a gun to my head, I'd say Arsenal will go through, but I could easily see Slavia Prague going through.
Final game, Villarreal home to Daniel Seaga. Villarreal with the one away goal, which I believe was a penalty, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so... Yeah. You see, Villarreal are a decent team. I think they're 7th or 8th. I'll find out right now, because they are playing as things stand in Serie A. They're 5th in La Liga, but they're 9 points off 4th place Sevilla. So, Villarreal won Champions League football next year. Next year, the Europa League is literally going to have to be their way of going. What Daniel Zagreb did against Spurs, I think, was a one-off spirited performance. I think Villarreal will probably score 2 or 3 goals comfortably here at home in Spain. And I don't see it going any other way. I think it's going to be a comfortable win for Villarreal.
Yeah, 100% agree. Obviously, this is one of the sort of close games, I think. The fact that Villarreal got the away goal, I think the Zagreb have got some really sort of going to struggle, I think, to score. Obviously, a good penalty from Moreno. But yeah, I think Villarreal, obviously with Unai Emery, who's very experienced. Obviously, I know Doug has spoken about it before on Doug's channel. He's spoken about how good the pedigree is of Emery in the Europa League, and I feel like he's got the experience and know-how. And I feel like, as you sort of spoke about, Zagreb was very much a one-off, I think, against Spurs, and I feel like this might be the end of the road for them. So yeah, I think Villarreal will go through.
And that brings our first episode of the Golden Show on the Blue podcast to a done. We went for 1 minute and 57 minutes. Flew past, absolutely. Flew past. I hope everyone's enjoyed. I said this is a bit longer episode than normal because we ended just a podcast and we did an overall view of the Premier League and stuff. So this episode's a bit longer than what they will be going forward, but it gives you a good insight to how we're going to do things. We're going to push the Premier League 11 to next week just simply because of time restraints, because we'll be here forever trying to decide that. And I think it'll be better having guests on as well to do that, so it isn't just me and George trying to do it. So hope everyone enjoyed. I think it was a really good episode. I think we talked a lot of good football, covered a lot of ground, and next week we'll get to an actual schedule and how we're actually going to and how we're going to do things. So George, you got anything to add?
Yep, thanks very much for having me, Josh. I think this has been a good, as you sort of spoke about, a good first show from us. Obviously, it's all sort of a learning curve in some ways. Obviously, an experience. It's all on the sort of the first time that we're doing this. And as you said, we've sort of this will be slightly longer than we would normally go for, but like Josh has sort of mentioned, this is because we're sort of introducing the podcast and giving you guys a sort of insight into it. So those sort of initial things that we went through for that first half an hour or so will not be there, obviously, for future episodes. We'll obviously hope to work and improve and make things tighter and so forth. And obviously we did cover a lot of ground. I think, we went over so many different aspects of different clubs and teams, and hopefully there was something in there for everyone who's watching. And we'll obviously look forward to entertaining, hopefully, and causing a lot of talking points with the viewers moving forward. Again, obviously, wanted to sort of move on to other topics as well, and sort of go into greater detail. So I'll try and work on to be a bit more succinct as well. But it's quite, as Josh sort of said about previously, I'm quite passionate about football, and I can talk for hours about it. So so that is going to be something that I'm going to work on. But yeah, absolutely, really enjoyed it, Josh, and thank you for having me, like I said, and thank you to the Blue Podcast again for allowing me to come onto their channel.
So, as I said, we will be, me and George, even though this is a Sunday, so it's a bit weird saying this, me and George will be back, not this Friday, but the Friday after, even though you guys will be seeing this on the Friday, and we will be back, obviously, to talk about what's happened in the Premier League week. Was there any upsets in the European competitions, and how much did me and George get wrong and right? So there's going to be plenty to talk about, and we hopefully, I don't know who yet, but hopefully we'll have some sort of guests on as well. So if you guys do enjoy, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, share the video, make sure to check out all the other shows upon the Blue Podcast, brilliant group, and as I said, we will be back better and bigger next week. So hope you guys all take it easy, and we will see you later. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Take care, guys. Thank you.